Hi guys, welcome back to another makeup and true crime video. If you're new here, my name is Zara and I love anything makeup related, mom life related, and true crime. What a weird combo, I know. But I've been doing these true crime videos for a short while now. And if you're loving this content like I love making it, please consider subscribing to my channel. I would love to have you here. And if you enjoy the video, make sure to like the video so that YouTube will show it to other people who will like the video, because YouTube is YouTube and makes it super difficult for us small content creators. Okay, I'm really into matching my hair clips to my outfit, but I only have a blue and a green one. Ooh, close enough. Okay, so today's case is a case that occurred in 2009 in New South Wales, Australia. And this case was huge. It was one of the worst crimes in New South Wales history. So this story is based on the Lin family. And the Lin family consists of Min Lin, the father. He was 45 years old at the time. His wife, Yun Lin, who was 43 at the time. And they had 3 children, Brenda, who was 15, Henry, who was 12, and Terry, who was 9. And then Yun's sister, Irene Lin, also lived with the family. She was 39 at the time. So Min and Yun met in Sydney when they both moved from China to Australia after they finished their studies. And like most tiger parents, they wanted to give their kids the best life possible, great educations to help them have an amazing life, as they themselves did not grow up with much. They worked together in their news agency in Epping, and they were doing so well that the business turned over $1 million a year. And then they also had a really beautiful big home that was also worth over $1 million. They were actually doing so well that Min actually bought his parents a home about 30 minutes away from where they lived. And then they also lived down the road from Min's sister, Kathy, and her husband's name was Robert Z. And they lived so close, like 300 meters away, which was less than a 5-minute walk. And Min's whole family basically moved from China to Australia to be with Min and his family. So Kathy's husband, so Min's brother-in-law, was a successful ear, nose, and throat surgeon back in China. And when they actually moved to Australia, at first, they moved to Melbourne, and he started up a restaurant in Melbourne, but he just didn't do well. The restaurant failed. So then Robert and his wife Kathy moved to Sydney to be closer to Min and his family. They moved to Sydney in 2005, and Robert wanted to be successful like his brother-in-law Min, who had a booming news agency. But Robert tried to start a few businesses, but all of them just kept failing. But the family, they all remained super close together. They would always be around each other, always spend time together. So on 17th July 2009, the Lin family and then Kathy and Robert, they went to the in-laws' house, so Min's parents' house and Kathy's parents' house, for their weekly Friday night dinner. They always had dinner as a family on Friday nights. Their eldest daughter, Brenda, didn't attend because a few days earlier, she actually left on a school trip to go to New Caledonia because she took like French classes. So everyone in this family is just enjoying their Friday night dinner, but they didn't know that this was actually going to be the Lin's last family dinner. Henry, the 12-year-old boy's grandmother, actually tried to get Henry to spend the night there, but Henry couldn't because he had to play sports the next day. But can you imagine if he stayed the night? This case would have just been so different. So the next morning, Saturday, the 18th of July, 2009, the news agency doesn't open up as normal. And people in the area who were regular customers were really shocked by this because in all the years that the news agency had been operating, it was never closed. Min was always there every single day, and it just wasn't normal for them not to open up or at least give notice, especially on a Saturday morning because that was one of the busiest days in the business. And then that morning, Kathy and Robert actually started getting calls from the locals wondering why the news agency didn't open up that morning, which I find bizarre because if a local shop of mine wasn't open, I don't even know what number to call. Like, who do I call? But I guess everyone in that area was pretty familiar with the Lin family. And during that phone call to Kathy and Robert, the locals were saying there was like newspaper deliveries left outside and other deliveries like piling up outside the front door. So Kathy and Robert decide to go and check on the Lin family to see what happened. So they arrive at the Lin's residence at around 9 a.m. and once they arrived, they noticed that the front door was unlocked. But then nothing else in the home seemed disturbed. Their shoes were still in the same place at the front door and their belongings weren't disheveled or thrown all over the place like a burglary. So their first thought was maybe they just left the door unlocked. So then they decide to head on upstairs, and as they're on their way up, they're calling Min's mobile, but no one's answering. So they make their way up the stairs to the second story of the home. And once they reached the top, they were just shocked by what they saw. Blood was everywhere, across the walls, on the ceiling, on the floor. And as they entered each of the bedrooms of the Lin family, they found all the members of the Lin family bludgeoned to death. Kathy, obviously panicking, calls 000 for an ambulance, and her husband Robert actually leaves the home to go to the grandparents' home to let them know what happened. Kathy, now being left alone at the crime scene, she was in a panicked and obviously distraught state. She couldn't actually properly describe what she was seeing to the dispatcher on the phone. And I'll try and insert the recording of the call here. You can also hear on the call Kathy speaking to Robert in Cantonese, telling him, "I'm more scared than you, please don't leave me." And you can hear him just saying, no, I have to go get your parents, they have to know what happened. So let me know your thoughts on this call down below. It's probably one of the worst dispatches I've ever heard. Like, this person should not have had this job.
Ambulance, A53717. Thank you, police emergency, this is Tim.
Hello, I need an ambulance.
What
Epping
suburb?
North?
What
Epping
suburb?
North.
Epping
Epping
North.
North.
Just let me find it here. What corner street's closest?
Close to, Beck Street.
Close to...
Epping North, Oval Park. Hello?
What's wrong? What's wrong?
I'm not sure someone, I think, I'm not sure.
You need to tell me why you need an ambulance. What's wrong?
Yeah, I think someone died. I'm not sure.
Why do you think someone's dying?
I don't know.
You need to tell me something. You're asking for an ambulance, but why?
Yeah, I also need a place.
Yeah, why? What's wrong?
Because I think someone would die.
Yeah, you need to say why. What have you seen or heard that makes you think someone is going to die? What is wrong? Don't scream. Just answer my question. What's wrong? Can I talk to someone else? Is there anyone else there?
No,
Who's in the background talking? I've got police on the way, but you need to tell me what's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, because I have someone to be killed.
Is someone bleeding? Is someone unconscious?
I think they died.
Why? Why?
I'm not sure, but maybe someone killed my brother's family. No.
Why do you think that? Put the other person on the phone for me. Please go to Telstra.
251-438.
Thank you, police emergency. This is Tim.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, what's your address? Epping North?
Epping North.
What's wrong?
I need someone to come quick.
Yeah, we are coming. You need to stop screaming and tell me what the problem is.
Yeah, I think my brother's family, someone killed my brother's family.
Why do you think that?
Yeah, because I went to his house and I knocked the door and the door is just closed and I opened it. And then up the stairs, find my brother. I couldn't find it. I'm not sure.
Where's your brother?
I can find my brother. She's in law. I think someone is dying.
Are they on the ground?
Pardon?
Are they on the ground?
No, they're the bedroom. They're all the bedroom.
Are they in the house? Is your brother in the house?
I'm not sure because I just have to take a look at it. The body. I just have to call you.
Have you found? We are driving there. Answer my questions, please. Have you found a body?
I'm at my brother's home.
Have you found a body?
Because I went to his home and upstairs to check it because his shop is open and he's the agent and someone is go to check and I found it just quick.
We are driving there. Don't say quick. Tell me what's wrong. Have you seen your brother?
I'm not sure because in the bedroom I just looked like this. I thought
We're already driving there. You don't need to worry. We're on the way. But can you see your brother?
I'm not sure.
No, it's yes or no. Can you see him?
No.
Is he in the house?
Pardon?
Is your brother in the house?
I'm not sure.
No, it's yes or no. Have you seen him in the house?
I didn't see him.
But why do you think he's dead? I'm a bit confused.
Because I saw my brother and sister-in-law, the body, and I saw the sister-in-law, sister's body, and I saw the two cousins, to my brother's son's body. So I thought, stay up there. I didn't see my brother.
Can you see their bodies?
Yeah, I saw. So quick.
We're coming. We're on the way. You don't need to worry. We're on the way.
I called the ambulance. I'm not sure they're by or not.
No, ambulance are on the way as well.
Okay, thank you much.
Police are in the street now. They'll be there in 10 seconds. Are you outside the house?
Yeah.
Are you out the front?
Outside, yeah, front, the driveway.
Can you see the police yet? They're driving there right now. They'll have their lights on.
So when the police arrived, they found Yun first, and she was on top of her sheets, bashed with blood everywhere. They then checked on Yun's sister Irene next, who was found in her room slumped against a wall with massive blood smears down that wall. And then the poor boy's room, they were found in the same way, except it looked like the boys may have been awake when the attacker walked into the room. And it looks like the boys actually put up a fight with their attacker before they were killed. As for Min, they could not find his body anywhere. And their initial thought was that Min actually killed his family and fled. So then later on, his sister Kathy tells the police to check for Min's body under the sheets in the master bedroom. And then that's how they found Min's body, which is so weird. The victims' faces were also so badly beaten that they were unrecognizable. And it was later determined that 4 out of the 5 victims were actually suffocated prior to being killed. Police believe that the attacker must have been super angry at the family for them to beat this family so bad and to do it while they were sleeping. It was definitely a crime of passion. They believe Min was killed first, then Yun, and then Irene, and then the boys. And they believed the murder weapon to be a hammer of some sort. And they also believed that this hammer-like object had a rope around the handle that the attacker would have had on their wrist to prevent the weapon from slipping from their grip. I don't know how they would have even figured that out. As the police searched the area, they found that there was no sign of a break-in and that a key had been possibly used to enter the property. So did the Lins leave a spare key near their home? Like, how did someone enter the home without any trace? Also, the power was switched off at the power board thing. So what, did the killer know where this was? Did they know the house well? Or did they spend some time surveilling the property, creeping outside the house, looking for a spare key, looking for the power board? They weren't fully sure. There was so much blood everywhere, the bedroom door handles, the walls, the stair railings, but they saw no evidence of blood on Brenda's door handle or in Brenda's room. So why didn't the killer go into Brenda's room? Did they know she was away on a school trip? They also found 24 bloody footprints, which was between a US size 8.5 and 10.5 men's size, which indicated there was only one attacker. And they even determined the shoe that the attacker was wearing to be of the brand ASIC. So as I mentioned before, Brenda was actually away on a school trip. And while she was on the school trip, she logs onto Facebook, to do what every 15-year-old does on Facebook. Check your status, post some pics, peace, And while she's on Facebook, she gets sent a link from one of her friends with a news article showing her home and stating that her family had been murdered. I cannot even imagine. Brenda at first thought it was just a twisted joke, so she didn't even believe it. But then her school actually booked the first flight back home for Brenda. And Brenda states that when she arrived at the airport and she saw her auntie Kathy waiting for her just crying, she knew that everything that was happening was real. Brenda says her biggest regret was actually how she left her dad at the airport. She was, around her friends and she didn't want to say bye to him properly because she's like, oh my God, I'm going away for like 1 week. I'm going to see you so soon. So she was super prideful, you know, with her friends around, and she kind of just stood there awkwardly and said bye to her dad really awkwardly. She never hugged him or told him she loved him because, you know, her friends were around and she didn't want to be embarrassed. She says she wished she thanked him for being an amazingly loving and caring parent, which is just so sad. Imagine living with that for the rest of your life. Like that regret is just, it's so sad. So because Brenda was only a minor at the time, she went to live with Kathy and Robert. And Robert actually offered to adopt Brenda hours after her parents were found murdered. The news agency business also transferred over to Robert and Kathy so they could continue running it and carry on its operations. The community was so supportive of Brenda because that news agency truly became a part of the community, and they wanted to support Brenda financially too. So they ended up donating towards a trust fund for Brenda. On 29th July 2009, 10 days after the murder took place, Kathy and Robert pleaded to the public for any information on what could have happened to the Lin family and why this happened. Then, for the next 2 years, police just spent this time ruling out what could have happened to the family. And there were so many theories of what could have happened to this family. But also during this process, they began secretly following their main suspect's every movement. They secretly had video surveillance set up in this person's home for over 6 months. And this suspect was recorded on that video surveillance cutting up an ASIC shoebox into tiny little pieces and then flushing those pieces down the toilet. Who could this person be? I mean, who could it be? Could it be Uncle Robert? If you guessed this after I told you he left the crime scene when they found the bodies, that's when I figured it out too. Yes, it was him, because prior to this, the police actually told his wife, Kathy, oh, we found a bloody shoe print. These shoes were definitely from the brand ASIC. So Robert was like, never gonna catch me. And then they even found a blood stain in Robert's garage under a chest of drawers. And this blood stain matched 4 of the 5 victims' DNA. This blood stain was a transfer, which they believed to have happened the morning of the murders. Because when Kathy and Robert started getting calls about the news agency not being opened, Robert was actually in his garage cleaning up his garage. How do you say it? Garage? Anyway, so he was cleaning his garage on that Saturday morning, and this blood on the garage floor, oh my god, I can't speak today, is suspected to have been transferred from either the murder weapon or his clothes, because they would have been so bloody and soaked. And to this day, the murder weapon has never been found. Police believe that on the day when the bodies were discovered, and Robert went to pick up his in-laws from their house, that is when Robert disposed of the murder weapon somewhere along that route. So now that the police had this evidence, they went back to their initial interviews with Robert shortly after the incident took place, and they found him to be super dodgy, super fidgety. He was flustered and he would cry easily, and he would always hold his head in his hands. And he was just super sus. Robert stated that after they finished that Friday night family dinner, he went home, he watched TV till about 2 a.m. He then took a shower and he went to bed. During these interviews, Robert stated that when he went to the crime scene, he saw 5 bodies, and that Min and Yun were lying next to each other. But remember, they couldn't actually find Min's body until Kathy told them to look under the bed sheets. So how did Robert see 5 bodies? Well, don't you worry, Robert thought of that. So he calls the police a few days after his interviews, and he says, oh, remember when I said I saw 5 bodies? I actually meant to say I saw 4 to 5 bodies. Silly me. So because of this, the police actually believe that Robert was the one who told Kathy to tell the police where to look for Min's body. But what was Robert's motive? Why did this happen? Why did he do this? Well, this is what the prosecution believes happened. Before Robert moved to Australia, he's a super successful ear, nose, and throat surgeon. After coming to Australia, opening up businesses that just kept failing, he eventually was just unemployed, and he could not stand that his brother-in-law, Min, was having all the success. Min had a successful news agency bringing in high revenue, had a large home, had a beautiful family, 3 children. And he was doing so well that he could even buy his parents a home. They believed that Robert felt that Min was favored by everyone in his family, and that his in-laws would always compare him to Min, who was super successful, and this just made him feel like shit. Robert had apparently told a family member previously that his in-laws made him feel humiliated, and that's what motivated him to kill Min and his whole family. And by killing Min, not only would his problems be solved, but he would also get the news agency, which he could then run and be as successful as Min was, I guess. Later on, more motive was discovered that had to do with Brenda, the eldest daughter of the Lin family. It had been revealed that Robert had been molesting Brenda, who was then 15, for quite some time. And initially, when Robert was announced as a suspect in the murders, Brenda found this hard to believe, that she was living under the same roof as her family's killer. To her, her uncle was her family, the only family she really had left. It was believed that Robert killed everyone in her family so that Brenda would be forced to go and live with him, and he would have access to her 24/7. Also, only someone in her immediate family would know that Brenda was away on a school trip, conveniently so that she wouldn't be around as a witness. During this time the police was monitoring Robert, they actually state that they have footage where Robert was inappropriate towards Brenda. A school principal also stated that she saw Robert one time standing uncomfortably close to Brenda, and that he was speaking to her in such an aggressive tone, and Brenda was just crying and she just knew something wasn't right. But unfortunately, Robert was never convicted of any crimes against Brenda. Robert had also continued molesting Brenda during those 2 years that she lived with him. So the police also linked this to the fact that Brenda's room had no traces of ever being entered into, no blood, no evidence at all. And together with the footage of Robert cutting up that ASIC shoebox, which by the way was a US size 9.5, exactly smack bang in the middle of the forensic evidence that it was between a size 8.5 and 10.5. And then the final piece of evidence was that blood stain on Robert's garage floor. So with all this evidence, on 5th May 2011, Robert was arrested. Robert then, like a douchebag, confessed to a cellmate in prison, who later on revealed all his confessions for a reduced sentence himself, told police that Robert said he had bought the murder weapon from a dollar store and that it was a hammer, and he knew that that dollar store did not have real CCTV cameras. They were fake, so he knew he wouldn't be caught on camera. Then he sedated his wife Kathy so that she wouldn't wake up when he snuck out to commit the crimes, and that he also planned to steal a dead man's DNA from a funeral home and plant it on the murder weapon. So Robert actually ended up having 4 trials, because during the first trial, Brenda's sexual assault was introduced. So then it was declared a mistrial. And then during the second trial, the judge fell ill and then they had to postpone the trial. Then his third trial lasted 10 months, but the jury could not come to a verdict. So then again, it was declared a mistrial. Then before his 4th trial, after spending nearly 5 years in jail, he was released on bail while waiting for his 4th trial to begin. In June 2016, his 4th trial began, and 8 months later, the jury found Robert guilty and convicted him on the murders of Min Lin, Yun Lin, Irene Lin, Henry Lin, and Terry Lin. On each count, he was sentenced to imprisonment for life. So 5 life sentences without parole, which I think is just fully deserved. Robert actually tried to appeal his sentence in the year 2020, but after less than 10 minutes of deliberation, the Criminal Appeals Court just dismissed his case. Brenda, who is now 26 years old, has since through interviews stated that she was very insecure as a child, and that Robert knew this and took advantage of that, and took advantage of her in her most vulnerable state. She says she has had trouble rebuilding her life, but credits her amazing family for the person that she is today. She said she is always grateful for the community's support during those times, and she wants to make sure that she does everything that her family wanted her to do. This is such a horrific thing to happen to Brenda and of course the rest of her family, and sometimes I find it hard to believe that people even do these kinds of things over what? Money? Just go out there, get a job, be happy, man. So that is the end of today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more videos like this, click over here. Make sure to like the video. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to have you join the fam. And I will see you in my next one, guys. Bye! Mwah!